Yo, what's up, guys? Talking about all of the challenge monsters because, in the end, what are the best units to pick? And I collected the data from all of the replays, or at least a whole bunch of replays. What I've been doing is just refreshing this, and you can actually see that this whole list is 20. And every time I hit the refresh, so we're looking at this tie flag, I guess, right now. If I refresh that right now, let's see how far the tie flag goes down. Okay, it doesn't go down as much as it used to. So that's like 6 down in about 10 seconds. It used to be just 20 or more than 20 matches every refresh I did. So you can see that a lot of people have been playing this. It's definitely slowing down because it's being released for a longer time. And I think most people do have the rewards by now, or at least a lot of people that were invested in this have the rewards by now. But let's actually look at the data for the win rates. Before we start and showcase what are the best and the worst units in the tier list, I want to ask you guys, go to the comment section and write down the 2 names that you think are the best units of all of these, and write down the 2 names of the worst units of all of these. And then let's see if it overlaps with the actual win rates or the tier list that I make later on. I pulled all of the data of all of the units of all of the win rates, and the main columns that we're looking at is the pick rate and the win rate. Everything else is a little bit more random. Might you ask, where does this data come from, or who made this? Well, I made this, and this was pretty much the predecessor towards the SWRT and the SWArena.gg. But let's look at the units. So first thing we can actually see is that the Meowing, Misty, Zeratul, and Gapso are way overstacking anyone else. Like, it's absolutely insane. Like, and I can also check like the pairs of win rates in a second, which I will also showcase for a few units. Minato's doing great, Douglas is doing great, but they're definitely a little bit lower on the pick rate. Same for the Shizuka. Layla, of course, doing great. But let's also look all the way at the bottom. So I think I'm probably sitting a little bit in front of it, so I'm gonna just drag it up here. Worst units to pick is the Ramel and Judia, which does make a lot of sense, because if we're looking at the stats of the Ramel and Judia, it is absolutely the worst build. It's not a really terrible unit, but it's just a really bad build, because we're looking at recovery 3 for recovery that's near non-existing. That thing does absolutely no damage. Moore is also doing really bad, and let's actually see why the Moore is doing that bad. Does he have a super terrible build? I would say that this build is not that bad. Well, he's just lacking damage as well. This accuracy S2 should have been just more add damage stats, and he should have had more attack, more HP, and that kind of stuff. Asher, funny enough, which is the fastest unit, and I've heard a lot of people say it's like, oh, I don't have any Swift units, I'm gonna lose. Oh, I don't have any Speed leads, I'm gonna lose. Well, Asher is one of the worst units out there. Yan Hong is one of the worst units out there. Ethna is one of the worst units out there. Oliver Sierra is sitting at near bottom tiers as well. So actually a lot of the units that people are like, oh, I would like to have these units in the box, are doing one of the worst. It might, of course, be that people that don't really understand how to play with certain units do lose more, because I'm checking for all stats. I'm not checking like if you're above 5 wins or something like that could do that. But it also does show that the units that are easiest to use, such as the Meowing, the Misty, the Zeratul, the Gapso, are doing by far the best. So that is fairly interesting to see. So let's actually put this towards a tier list. So just purely the win rates towards a tier list, what would that look like? Well, it would look as following, which is definitely a very interesting look at it itself, because this is just purely by win rate. So also left to right is still looking at the win rate. And that does showcase that Giana, Yeon Hong are actually doing absolutely terrible. And I think that is because the Giana is on a really bad build. The Giana is definitely way too low HP, decently low in the attack. Bomb damage is not necessary. It would have been better if you fixed the accuracy in the 85 over here and then go full at damage stats. So the build of this is pretty squished, pretty darn bad. So that really doesn't help. But in the end, if we're looking at the Zeratul, Zeratul arguably is, I would like a build like this with like 30 extra speed. Then you have a really good Zeratul. Now it's kind of like, not sure. Same about the crit damage S1. Either you go full on crit damage, kind of, well, no, actually, no, this artifact sets is actually not that bad. It could be more additional damage by HP, but the moment you armor break, this is actually gonna stomp really darn hard. Funny enough, a lot of people are actually talking about the Misty build being bad, but the Misty build is actually not bad at all. I think it's overhyped for people to go crit rate on the Misty, but in the end, if you check the calculations on Misty and saying like, oh, there's way too low attack, well, Misty doesn't scale that much from attack. Misty scales a lot from speed. So Misty scaling from attack is only needed if you're fighting Leos. Otherwise, just straight up the speed scaling is really good. Plus, the artifacts on this are really focused on the speed and the HP, and this thing is looking at a lot and a lot of HP. So this Misty build is actually way better than you expect. And I can actually recommend people to do that in the normal RTA as well, to maybe make a Misty not on the crit rate 4, but on an HP 4, and then go for high additional damage. Might you say it's like, yeah, but say on defense break, I do so much more damage. Well, the thing is, your odds of landing a defense break are not crazy high. If you always land on defense break, sure, crit rate way better, absolutely. But if you're not landing on defense break, a build like this is way, way better. So that's actually an interesting one, which does make a lot of sense. Meowing, I'm not too fond of the build where it is recovery 2. I would have rather seen first skill crit damage. But the combination of the HP, the defense being super high, speed being pretty decent, is actually a really good build in the runes itself. The artifacts I'm not too fond of, as mentioned. It is not that bad because it's still super high efficient. If we're looking at a 22 on an 11 over here with 2 sidelines that are still good. These and this are pretty useless right there. These 2 are nice. But yeah, that makes the Meowang pretty much near unkillable. So those are the highest win rate units for this over here. And a lot of them do make sense because simply what are the builds based on them. But this is just purely based on win rates. Let's actually redo this with the idea of like, okay, where would I like to place the units and where do I think that the units are good after playing a bunch of routes and a bunch of things. And I actually did notice I played a bunch of rounds as well where I just simply was adding in just the highest efficient units all the time, and you actually get decently far, in all honesty. Like every time that, I actually wanted to showcase that, the combination of 2 units. So let's actually do a few combinations. So with this tool, I can also click on a certain unit, and then I will see all of the win rates and all of the stats from that particular unit. So in this case, I clicked on the Meowang. So we see all of the win rates from the Meowang against the Meowang and that kind of stuff. So if we select it by win rate, I think by lowest is like, yeah, this is what's winning good against Meowang. So if I go a little bit over here again, Ashe is doing terrible against Meowang, Moore is, Gio is, those kind of things. But what is good against the Meowang is a Minato, makes sense. Kovachi kind of makes sense-ish, I guess. But what I can also do is, this is where I have the Misty, and Misty I can, of course, do the same thing on as well. Zeratul is hella clapping Misty. Gapso, next thing in line to clap Misty, makes sense. It's hella clapping Yeonhong more, and those kind of things also make sense. But what I can do is, I can take this number over here, and I can combine the 2. So, oh wait, you don't see it because I'm doing some stuff in the URL. But here we can see for Meowang and Misty together, they are looking at a 68% win rate. That is absolutely insane. And then let's see what's winning against them. The only thing that's actually kind of winning against them is a Zeratul, an Angela, and everything else. Like, we even see Gio have a 0% win rate against Misty plus Meowang, which is fairly understandable. Those 2 together are super strong. So some of those pairs are definitely like, if you have the pair of those 2, or if you have anything of the pairs of the double S units, lock them in. Like, even fucking first pick them. Don't give a shit about your speed leads and shenanigans, because we can also go the other way around. People might argue that Sierra Giana is one of the strongest combos you can have. So let's actually add in the Sierra, which is sitting, or the Giana at a 47 win rate. The Sierra also at 47. Let's combine the 2 of them. And let's see what's the win rate on them then. Giana and Sierra together have a 45% chance win rate. And why is that? Missing bombs, not that great of builds, losing against a whole bunch of things, probably loses against the Meowang, loses against the Josephine, loses against the Misty. They have 66% chance to lose against just straight up those units. Like, there's a whole bunch of them that is just straight up losing super hard. So those are the kind of things you have to keep in mind. I think I see a lot of people instantly first picking Giana. And let me know in the comments if you always felt that Giana was the strongest unit in the game. Now you had some chance to play with Giana. How do you feel about Giana right now? Because, of course, there's going to be people saying, it's like, yeah, but now the Giana players are finally saying, like, I told you so, blah, 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 but it's actually best unit in the game, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Maybe it's the build, maybe it's just the scenario which the other units that are drafted in here are there, because in the end, it does have some really strong counters to the Giana, because the Josephine is in there, these 2 don't give a shit about Giana, Gapso doesn't give that much shit about Giana, so there's a lot of counters to the Giana out there, and I think she's mainly overspammed, first picked, and those kind of things, and that's making her really bad. But it's definitely interesting to see by the win rates over here of what units should perform good, what units should not perform good. In the end, it's not necessarily that if you lock in these 4 units, you're always going to guarantee the win. It's a lot higher of the chance for you of winning, but it also does still make it where you still have to have a consistent team where you're countering the enemy, where you're doing stuff that does make sense against the enemy, and those kind of things, rather than just slapping in like high efficient units, because in the end, high efficient units are only good if they also counter the enemy to the right extent. But let's see what I think for units that I would go 1 up, 1 down, or anything like that, based on what I feel like. So, for example, the Minato, I feel like is doing good, because especially in lower ranks, people do not understand that they shouldn't be spamming AoEs into the Minato. So I think I'm gonna 1 down the Minato. I think I'm gonna 1 up the Masha. I don't like her artifact build, but the rune build is actually really strong. Like, this is one of those rune builds. This is just straight up, like, this is what you see in G3 for rune builds. Absolutely. It's just the artifacts. If you had more crit damage S2, if you had more crit damage Own, if you had more damage on wind or anything like that, or even damage on fire to kill the Meiwang, you would have had a lot more value out of it. But in this case, it's just 288 in speed, which is terrible. So I would say that one. I'm not too big a fan of the Shizuka. I think the Juno is good, but only in very particular matchups. I think the Angela is a bit better, so I would like to 1-up that. I think the Kovachi is also better. I would even 2-up the Kovachi. I think the Kovachi is definitely better. And yet, gotta give credits to the Giana, because Giana in the right draft is still a really strong unit, so I would even 2-up that. I would say the Antares is kind of fine in my opinion. The Megami, I think, is kind of overrated in this as well. Same for the Heigang. The Heigang is often like, sure, Heigang into a Giana is really good, but Heigang into those kind of units absolutely doesn't do anything. I would say the Asher, I feel like, is even F tier. That thing is kind of bad. I feel that you are a little bit better than this tier right there. The Leo is just the Sonya counter. Outside of the Sonya count, it's not really doing anything, I would say, for the whole draft, so not a big fan. I would definitely say that the Laura goes up. I definitely do like that one out there. I would say the Riley goes up as well, because the Riley is one of the stronger pairs with these units, especially the first, well, all of them, and also with the Masha. So I think that that pair is definitely there. Sierra, in my opinion, still goes 1-up. The Yeonhong, I was actually not that big a fan of. That one I'm not a big fan of. The Oliver is okay-ish, but I'm not liking the Oliver build, mainly because the Oliver build is looking at a, what's it called, accuracy set, while also already having max accuracy and then additional damage artifacts. So these, like, I would, this line wasted, this line wasted, this line wasted, this line wasted, this line wasted. Only this is a good line, because you don't have any crit rate. You already have max accuracy. So it's super wasted bad build on the Oliver, so therefore the Oliver doesn't really perform that well. I think that this kind of does make sense for the units that I do personally like to pick myself from time to time. I would maybe say the Chandra 1-up. And yeah, I think that this kind of does make more sense in my opinion. I would almost say Josephine goes 1-up as well. This is more of a counter pick. That is, no, I would actually 1-up the Layla as well. Layla is definitely a little bit more depending on where you use it. But in my opinion, I would go for this rather than what I showed at the start for anything like that. Let me know in the comments if you do agree or don't agree with this tier list. In the end, well, the first tier list was just purely based on whatever win rates I had on any of those units. Also, might you ask, will you make all of this stuff public somewhere that everyone can play around with this? No, actually not, because I just made this on a local host. And this is definitely not, as they say, like, user-friendly proof that you cannot mess up all of the data, because I never really made it with the intention to share it. I just made it with the intention to make videos out of it. So that is the main thing on that. So I can slowly scroll down the list so you can actually check in the numbers if you're curious about anything about win rates, pick rates, ban rates, that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's about it. So I think I will be doing this because I think we will get new monsters every time that this stuff resets. I will be doing this for about, let's say, 5,000 matches every time that it resets. And then I think within the first 2 days or 3 days, I want to be making a video like this. So I think they always reset on the 1st of the month. So let's say that on the 2nd or 3rd of the month, I want to be making a new video like this, saying like, okay, this is the new tier list kind of thing, or these are like the high win rate units, rather than anything. So this is my opinion. The one that I had at the start is just purely by win rate. So Hope you did enjoy this video. Guys, thanks a lot for watching and hope to see you as always in a next one. And I've noticed not all of y'all have been subscribing, so definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. See you as always later. In the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.